All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. I've been waiting for this one. Y'all, we gonna have me and my boy Tay. I'm gonna call him Tay, although the full name Tay Mullah.
Good.
Wait, I'm over here jacking it up already.
That's
Give me
perfect.
the full one. Give me the full. Say the full name.
Taymullah Abdur-Rahman.
All right, I'm gonna practice it. So next time I'm gonna be
Yes,
flowing
sir.
with it.
Yes, sir. I
But
got you.
me and my boy Tay, we was just flowing right even before we started recording. That's how I
Right.
knew
We
we
had
was
to
gonna get a
stop.
good. We was chopping it up, and I was like, "Dude, we let me hit record before
Right.
before we get too far into the episode."
That's what's up.
Shout out to Jimmy. What's the name of the team that connected us
Yeah,
again?
Jimmy Dwyer and Dalen Publicity.
So if y'all need some good promotion, I don't know them personally, but sounds like they a good team. They got my man here,
Yes,
and
sir.
they doing good things to support our community. So I'm gonna big up them.
No
Welcome
doubt.
to Rise Urban Nation, sir.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, my brother.
Larry, it's a pleasure to have you too. I forgot before we hit record to get where you got them frames from, but we'll go back to that later because
Yeah,
me and him got this thing
likewise,
with frames.
likewise.
So now tell me,
Yeah.
let's before I go into the whole journey of you going from being a pop star and so forth. For the people who may not know you, who is Tay? Like I know that's a deep question. You can go far as wide as you want to, but who who is the man, the myth, the legend? How
Yeah.
would you
Well,
define yourself to folks?
yeah, I appreciate you, man. I started in as Tyrone Sutton, and I was
Okay.
part of a group called Perfect Gentlemen, and we came out in 1989 with a song called Ooh La La, top 10 song, did pretty well. We were touring the world and, did a lot of different great things. That lasted for about 3 years. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time I was about 16 and a half, I was back in the neighborhood, trying to find my identity, struggling back right where I started with nothing. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I got caught up in the same street stuff that everyone gets caught up in. I became a
Mm-hmm.
teen father, um, and basically just tripped and stumbled until I found Islam in
Mm-hmm.
1999. Changed the trajectory of my life. Went to Saudi and studied briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Came back and became a prison chaplain, and the rest is history, as they say.
Man, that's a beautiful story. Like, I knew there was correlations between that because when I was reading about you, I was like, man, my man he's a former pop star, he's a social entrepreneur, he's an educator, and he's an advocate for social justice. Um, Looking at prison abolition, and
Yes.
I'm like, how did he get? I was trying to figure out how to connect the dots, but now it's threatened. So I'm getting to see the journey now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like this.
Yeah, yeah, but it all makes sense now. But like when you first see it, it's like this don't make no sense. Like, how
Right.
did this happen? Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And part of that, Terrell, is because when you don't have a black male mentor in your life, when you don't have a father, you spend probably half your life trying to pick up the pieces from the mistakes you made because I never had anyone to grab my collar and say, no, this is the direction you need to be going in. So that
Hmm.
would that would cause me to like sample this out, try this mask
Yeah.
on, try this costume on. Maybe I'm a pimp, maybe I'm a thug, maybe I'm this kind of guy, maybe I'm a
Hmm.
drug dealer. And then what you do is when you go through that maze, if you live and you don't go to prison, hopefully you land on your feet. But it doesn't make sense because of that lack of mentorship. That's what you're really
Man.
seeing.
Yeah, you know what? I love that you speak on mentorship because that's something that I try to do more and more nowadays. And that, although I had a father figure in the home because my stepdad, who's from Nigerian roots, was a father figure, the streets still had a strong hold on me as a black male because, as we were sharing growing up, like, these identities that young black boys get with, like, I'm a young black boy who was on a prison, the pipeline system, right? And being labeled with ADHD, and then
Mhm.
teachers telling me he can't learn anything, and oh, he's just disruptive and he needs to be put in this class because he can't learn anything and he's disruptive. He has behavioral issues. It made you start to feel like, for me, it made me start to feel like, okay, maybe I am that that
Mhm.
that thing that they say that I am. And
Yeah.
then
And I
you
think I
know,
think you make a valid point. I have a son with ADHD, And,
Mm-hmm.
I had to do a little bit of research and try to talk to the administration. They were white people, very receptive. Nevertheless, I had to tell them, like, make sure studies show that, when a black kid and a white kid has ADHD, when the white kid has it, it's about being clinical, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
something the way his brain just works differently, and we have to, adapt to that. But when a
Mm-hmm.
black kid has ADHD, it becomes
Mm-hmm.
behavioral, right? He's
Yeah.
disruptive. He just can't sit still. We can't get
Mm-hmm.
anything done. He has to go into a cluster group. He's in a special ed now. And they both have the exact same thing. And that's how the stigma gets placed on us when we think, man,
Yeah.
I'm just born to lose. So I might as well do what I got to do.
Yeah. And that's how the mindset was. But we know we further than that. And I'm
But
glad
look
that
at
you
you
broke that
now.
down.
Look at you now, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Shining.
uh, let me dive back before I get ahead of myself because I want to spend some time really talking about, Black Muslims in America and the experiences and challenges. Because I think, when we talk about that, there's often misconception, misrepresentation, and there's a lot of things around that. As a Black Muslim American, how have you historically and I'm trying to think of the right word, historically and contemporary events shaped your views and actions towards social justice?
Right. What's funny, because you got several things going on. I got,
Mm-hmm.
like, my identity as well as yours, Taryll. When we walk into rooms, our identities are disruptive, right? Just from the way we look
Mm-hmm.
before we speak. When we walk into certain rooms that have other races in it, or maybe other cultures, our identities are disrupted from the gate. And so for me, sometimes it's my Black identity pushing forward. Sometimes it's my Muslim identity pushing forward. So, for instance, if I'm at a Celtics game, I'm from Boston. If I'm at a Celtics game, it's my Black identity pushing forward.
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, if I'm in an immigrant based mosque,
Mm-hmm.
it's my Black identity pushing forward, but also my Islamic identity, in the sense that I always have to continue to prove myself, right? A Black Muslim
Mm-hmm.
amongst immigrant Muslims oftentimes finds himself or herself in a position where they have to explain that they know about their religion. People come to me and say, they used to, they don't anymore, but they used to say, like, hey, your name's Taymullah. Do you know what that means? Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
immigrant Muslims asking me, do I know what my name means? Or like, where are you from? And I said, I'm from America. No, where are you really from? I'm from
Mm-hmm.
America. And, for instance, a friend of mine, Mustafa, he was recently shot in front of the masjid, in front of the mosque, right? After Juma, during Juma, he's outside selling his stuff and, whatever they selling outside. And there's a guy with a mask on, look like he's from, COVID mask. He has a hat pulled low. He's sitting out there for half an hour. They don't know what he's doing. He gets in his car, drives by, and shoots Mustafa.
Mm-hmm.
So the Mustafa is Black. The mosque
Yeah.
is immigrant based. Mustafa did some time in prison for robbery 20 years ago, right? So he's been in prison. He was in prison 20 years ago, but he's been home for 20 years. Upright citizen, working, doing a 9-to-5 thing, doing great. But when the immigrant Muslims found out that the person who was shot was Mustafa, they told the police, no, it was gang related. Don't worry about it.
What?
It's gang related. It's fine. It was an individual. But really, this was clearly having to do with a hate crime. And so the narrative is really that this person was probably waiting outside the mosque on Juma because he knows that that's a large group of Muslims coming out. But he didn't know when they were coming out. So he said, I'm gonna just shoot whoever I can shoot. And he ended up shooting Mustafa, and Mustafa protected someone else, a young kid. But the point being that these are the issues we constantly face. We're marginalized even within our own faith group. And that's difficult, right? Imagine,
Yeah.
I don't know what your faith practice is, but imagine, going to a church and you're not welcomed in your own place of worship, right? So we grew up in a church, my family being, my grandmother being Christian, where you go to the church and everybody's your cousin, either your blood cousin or they almost your cousin, just because it's family. But imagine being subjected to, you have to go in certain mosques and they're looking at you funny as if you don't belong and you worship the same
Yeah,
God they do. So it's a struggle.
yeah. Man, I didn't even know that. So like, I'm over here thinking about the different identities now and how they show up. And was it like that? Pre 9/11, or did it get like that post 9/11? I'm kind of curious because you know how those rhetoric that rhetoric,
Mm-hmm.
especially in America. There's two different type of rhetorics when it comes to the Black Muslim community.
Mm-hmm.
People either have the figmentation of Malcolm X and
Mm-hmm.
what uh was going on during that time, or they got the
Mm-hmm.
post 9/11 rhetoric in their head. It
Right.
is that's what creates the divide, or is there something else? And this is me just being curious because I don't know.
Nah, it's funny because listen, and this is not all. When we like make these sweeping accusations, it's wrong. So I don't want to say all immigrant Muslims, but a large enough of
Yeah,
them. Right?
yeah, and
Um,
we not saying everybody. We're just saying like
exactly.
from there's a lot of
Exactly.
experiences of these happening, and so
Exactly.
we're
And
not
so,
generalizing here, everybody.
exactly. Thank you. But what I will say is this: is it's funny you mentioned 9/11 because immigrant Muslims have traditionally used Black American Muslims to further their cause when it is convenient. So during 9/11, they pushed us up front. You
Mm,
guys, you guys know what to do because you've been through the civil rights movement. Talk, you be our face. You let them know we're safe. You let them know that we're all American. So there's a
mhm,
difference between diversity and equity. So for me, what I've seen a lot of the immigrant mosques do, and I say immigrant mosques because they have the foundation, the financial foundation to build these sprawling mosques. So they really control the narrative, right? Because their mosques are
mhm,
the most well seen and well known. But what I found is that they'll look around the room and say, "Man, we don't have enough brown faces in here." And so they call
mhm,
us in and they say, "Okay, now we got black and brown in the room." That's
mhm.
diversity. It's a
Yeah,
numbers game. But then if I say, "Hey, I got something I need to say, and it's important, and I think that you need to hear it, and I think it's going to change the narrative," they say, Brother Taymullah, we really don't want to hear that, right? And then this is
mm,
where you see the lack of equity. So sometimes the people get diversity and equity confused. Diversity is just you're present, but equity means that your voice is heard, and people actually appreciate what you have to say. So we were pushed
yeah,
to the front, and we continue to be used as cheerleaders and mascots without having any real input.
mm. That's sad. And I'm hoping that that changes because I think the unity in Black Americans and so just overall general, no matter what religion or creed you're in,
Mm-hmm.
the if immigrant Black folks and American Black folks were unite, we can do so many more things together and push so many more initiatives together and create community in
Indeed,
upwards and bounds and droves to really support and uplift one another. So uh,
indeed,
I, I'm
indeed.
I'm hoping that they hear your voice in this and then we can make
I
that
mean,
change.
my brother. Thank you, thank you. You know,
Right.
we have to be able to say Black Lives Matter in those spaces and have it actually reverberate and matter to them. And they can't
Right.
just be, you feel violated when Islam is violated or an Arab is violated. You got to feel violated when anybody who's marginalized and their identity is marginalized. You have to stand up for that as well. So that's, I think, something that's a learning curve for them. And I hope they
Right.
learn, because it's beneficial, as you said, to all of us.
Yeah. The other aspect of this is, from reading about your story and hearing what you were just relaying is the the role of kind of interreligious dialogue and I'm sure you're putting that intertwining that into the work that you do with prison the prison work that you do to like kind of push that narrative forth. Can you kind of delve into the importance of that interreligious dialogue in your work and your philosophy around prison abolition?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, so I worked in the prison system in a maximum security prison for 10 years. And I always say I went in as a theologian, right, with a whole bunch of theory and ideas and dogma, but I left as a practitioner because as a young man, I was very ignorant. I used to say a lot of ignorant things. If you read the book, American Imam, coming out February of 2024, you can get more detail about it. But essentially, I was very ignorant in terms of appreciation for the other and the identities of those great religious giants who came before me, whether it was Dr. Martin Luther King, whether it was Merton, whether it was Dorothy Day. All of these great people were basically being swept under the rug. I was sweeping them under the rug. But what I learned is my office was right in the middle between a Catholic chaplain and a Protestant chaplain. And the care and concern they showed me and the professionalism and the basic camaraderie that they showed me, it kind of broke down barriers for me. Because remember, I'm also still that black boy who was told, stay away from white men. We all had that conversation as a child. Don't go down there because that's where the white guys are. Stay away from there. So to be still wounded by that and enter into the prison system where no one looks like me except the prisoners, right? There's been times where, as a new chaplain, sometimes you get transferred to another prison. And I walk up to the warden and shake his hand and he don't shake my hand. And another police officer has to say, no, he's not a prisoner. He works here. So, I'm walking around the prison and people who don't know me, they think I'm a prisoner as well. And so I think that the seeing the Catholic chaplain and the Protestant chaplain treat me with care and concern, I let down my guard because I was raised to be a person of goodwill and fellowship. So basically that taught me that I was safe enough to do that and explore that part of my identity that allowed for that fellowship. So yeah, it was huge to have that happen to me.
Yeah, I'm just listening to that and just your approach to interfaith dialogue between the work you do in the prison is enlightening, and it's a testament to the power of really understanding empathy and bringing about change.
Indeed. Thank
And
you.
so I love all of that. So you mentioned the book.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write this book, and what impact do you hope it'll have?
Thank you. Well, I think what inspired me to write American Imam was there was a point in I don't remember 2015 or so when I was like, man, I was getting a graduate degree from a Christian seminary. I was working as an imam at Harvard University, and I was teaching the Holocaust as a full-time job. So I said, man, I might be the only imam who's working at Harvard as an imam, going to a Christian seminary teaching the Holocaust full time. And I said, man,
that's crazy. That's
there's
crazy.
got to be a story in that.
Is that in the book? Did you put that in the book? Or you might have to write a part 2 if that's not in the book.
Right. So, I mean, for me, I started to think about the story, and just basically everyone has an incredible story. I'm sure you have an incredible story. It's not that my story was more incredible than the other, but I think that God allowed me to be able to articulate it and have the outlet to just tell it, and kind of capture those blessed moments to say like, nah, this is something special. I think people need to hear about how this relationship with this deacon changed my life, or this relationship with this rabbi changed my life. And that's how it came about.
Yeah, when you talked about that, I was thinking about my mentorship of who came in my life, and it was a white Jewish man that came into my life that mentored me, and we got to meet each other where we were at, and I had all these misconceptions about don't trust the white man too,
Indeed.
and just having these dialogues that really helped me grow as a person and elevate out of the for lack of better words, the mental slavery that I was in because of what was being preached and taught to me.
Yes, indeed.
I got to read just like a little snippet in your bio about stuff about the book and so forth,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the journey that you've been on. And one thing that I wanted to ask you that I'm curious about is, what are the biggest misconceptions about the Black Muslim American experience, in your humble opinion, and how do we address them?
yeah. The first is that we somehow, when we become Muslim, we disown being an American. That we somehow we're secretly we have a dislike for being an American. I think that's a huge misconception. Um, there's nothing further from the truth. What I found is Black American Muslims have a deep appreciation for America, maybe even deeper. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't critique, right? Because to love something is to critique it. So we could critique democracy and we critique the laws and the criminal justice system along the way. But what happens is once you become Muslim and you realize there's a whole nother set of rights that this country gives you that not even some Muslim countries give you, right? Like, meaning in terms of
Mm,
if I need to pray, I can pray in the supermarket. I can pray in the mall. I can go pray in the parking lot. I have rights. During Eid is one of our holidays. The local mayor, he would change the train schedule to accommodate
mm,
Muslims coming from different parts of the state to meet and pray together. So I think as a,
mm,
as a Black American, yeah, we critique our country, but also there's something else as a Muslim that you say, man, I have all of these beautiful rights that allow me to express my religion and my faith every day. So I think that's a huge misconception that,
right,
we disown our American identity once we become Muslim.
right. I love that. As you continue to do this work, some people hearing you, they're probably going to get more curious, want to learn more. And I think we would do this podcast an injustice if we didn't talk about the ways individuals can kind of contribute to the
Yeah.
fight for social justice in prison. So what are some ways that they can really contribute and get involved?
Okay, so I have an organization called Spentum. You can go to spentum.com, spentum.org. That's S as in Sam, P as in Paul, E N as in noon, T E
Mhm.
M as in moon, as in man. So spentum.com.org. And Spentum has different categories. One of the things we do is we have an educational program that we're turning into a high school. So we take returning citizens, ex-cons, coming home from prison.
Mhm.
We train them on entrepreneurship and on accountability, all
Mm,
these things so that they can teach. And then we put them in touch with court involved and at-risk youth so that these returning citizens are actually facilitators and educators. We call them transformational educators, transformers. And
mhm.
they actually build rapport because they have that street credibility that the young people really respect. So
Yeah.
we have a store in the mall. We have a beautiful store in the mall, and it's actually a teaching store. So we use that store as
Mm,
our actual school. We're actually converting it into a high school now, where it's going to be functioning, accredited, where we have the ex-cons as teachers, and we have the at-risk youth as our students. And we really have a curriculum that is incredible because it's non-traditional, because we don't learn always just by books, and by
mm,
writing and listening. Sometimes we have to get up and do it. So I wanted to say that to say this. Here's the way
mhm,
that people can contribute to criminal justice reform and prison abolition.
mhm.
The
You
biggest
know,
mistake, go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead. The biggest mistake. Go ahead. No.
The biggest mistake that people of color make, and not just people of color, but marginalized groups, is that we separate ourselves into victims and perpetrators. So what that
Mm,
means is this. In Massachusetts, they have first degree murder, first degree life without parole. So that means, like, if you commit a murder and you go to prison, they can say it's first degree. You're never coming home.
mhm,
We're trying to abolish that law, life without parole. Why? Because when you remove a man away for 30 years, for 60 years, what you do is he shot that guy when he was 18, right? You've deprived him of all these different access, like these gateways to education and employment. So he goes and he makes a bad choice. He shoots someone at 18. But when that man is 45, 30 years later or so, he's not the same person. But guess what? You took him away from his family for such a long time that now his children or his mother or his, now that you're creating a cycle now. I've seen men share cells with their sons, right? Because you're punishing the entire family. So when I say that the biggest mistake we're making is we separate ourselves into perpetrators and victims. So for instance, a guy, he killed someone when he was 18. He's up for parole when he's 45. He's 50, 45, 50 years old. He goes to the parole board, and guess who shows up? The family of the person who he shot 30 years ago. And what they say is, Your Honor, judge or clerk, never let him out. He hurt us. He took our baby away. He needs to rot in hell and rot in prison. Okay. We respect people's pain, and we respect that life was lost. However, that same family will leave that parole hearing and a week later come back because their son is up for parole for the same crime. So in every family, there might be victims, but they also have perpetrators. And what we have to realize is that all these families of colors have victims and perpetrators. So we can't want our perpetrators to come home, but if we become victimized, then those perpetrators got to stay in prison. What we have to realize is that the entire system is set up to make us all victims and perpetrators, but it's one and the same problem, right? So what has to happen is, if a man has shown and demonstrated for 30 years that he got a clean record and he's doing the right thing and he's educated now, he's articulate, he's thoughtful, he's remorseful. We're trying to say the family should come and support his release so that this crime doesn't repeat with his children, right? So we don't lose 2 black men every time we lose 1, or we don't lose 2 Latino men every time we lose 1. Okay, 1 is already in the ground. He can never come back. God bless him. But in 30 years, if you can reform that other man, then send him back to his family and let him be an upright citizen. Because I believe, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, the men that I've seen in prison who are remorseful and who want to have a restorative lens, if they were to come home and be ahead of their households again, I'm telling you, brother, the murder rate in Chicago, in Compton, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Boston, it would drop immediately because there'd be men who have a restorative lens back in the household again immediately. But, that's not what people want. So the cycle continues.
I totally believe that. And this goes to our conversation we were having earlier before we hit the record button about reform, right? Our system isn't designed for reform. And you said something really, really clever to kind of to shape that. Could you repeat what you said about when we were talking about reform? I was telling you how there's I can't remember the actual country that does this, but they actually have a reform system where they reform people and then they get them back out,
Right.
and they see the reduction in crime. Usually most of the people that get let out after being reformed turn out to be outstanding citizens, and they really help bring community to wherever place they're at, and they live outstanding lives. And
Taryell, what I believe I said it, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe I said that, when you commit a crime, you're sentenced to prison as punishment, right? So that means that the prison sentence itself is punishment. They take you away from your family and your creature comforts. But the way the penal system is set up today, you are sent to prison for punishment. So there's the as punishment or for punishment. So that means that no, the prison itself isn't punishment. When you go to prison, it's for us to punish you with the way we dehumanize you, the way we mistreat your family when they come visit you, the way that you can't have contact visits, the way that we don't allow you to play with your children, the way we hike the prices up for the prison food and we lower the quality. All of these things are punishments, right, that happen in prison. So we're saying prison enough is deprivation enough. Now, while a person is in prison, you're going to slowly dehumanize them for punishment. And that's not correct. And likewise, when a guy comes home, he got to pay, if he has paperwork still, if he comes home from prison, he pays $50 to the state. And so here's the thing. We're saying, instead of him paying $50 to the state, you violated the code of conduct for the state, and now you got to pay us. But meanwhile, the victims don't get anything. He should be paying restitution to those people who he victimized. If he gotta pay $50 a week, that $200 a month needs to be going to somebody's mother, the victim of his mother, the mother of his victim rather, as opposed
Yeah,
to $200 going to the state. You miss the whole point when you're just paying the state like that.
yeah, I agree. Um, how do you envision the future of interfaith and interracial dialogue in America?
Well, I'll tell you what, brother. I believe that the world is better off with faithful people, right?
Mm,
And here's something I would like your opinion about. I found that my white Christian and Jewish brothers and sisters have been more embracing
mhm,
overall than black Christians. That doesn't mean I don't have black Christian brothers who I'm close to. Many I'm close to, but here's the issue. It
mhm,
almost feels like they feel like black Muslims have betrayed them by becoming Muslim. And in many
mm,
spaces, black Christians are hands off. They're like, really, they think Allah is a different God, not knowing that the word Allah is an Arabic word that means God, that Arab Christians call God Allah, right? And so what I think has to happen is that there has to be a continuous stream of education, right? We have to unlearn some of these biases and some of this behavior. And I think that as long as we continue to educate ourselves about the other and make space for each other and don't get caught up in the superficialities of the LGBTQ, and listen, none of that matters. That's between them and God. When them people got us in the target, they're not saying, is this person LGBTQ? Is this person Muslim or Christian? All they see is black and brown. So we have to learn to work together and use our white allies. And I don't mean misuse, but they use us, we use them. It's a mutual relationship. We have to use white allyship and solidarity so that they'll be able to stand in front of us and say not on our watch, right? And likewise, we can teach them the ways in which they have blind spots and the ways that they're tone deaf and the ways that they can work their way out of that kind of embedded prejudice that they have, some of them, not all of them. So I think the future of interreligious relations in America is bright. And I think it's the last hope for this country. I don't think that we're ever going to bond around skin color again because there's too many different types of blacks. There's too many different kinds of whites. There's too many political opinions. But what we have a chance to rally around is the idea that there's one God, he's above us, and we all have to work together to get along in order to please him.
yeah, each one teach one.
Indeed.
Uh, when in that period when you were working with these different gentlemen from different faiths and backgrounds, how did like give me something tangible? How did you do that? Like, cause
Yeah.
I,
It was
I see
tough.
even like you going back to what you were saying. Even in our own cultures, we have conflict within black communities. We have own conflict. We can't even come to the table to have a communication on why we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
This happens in different religions as well. So I'm trying to think of like what do you think was the tangible tools that I could use to like sit down with somebody who has a whole different viewpoint from me,
Yeah.
recognize my biases as I
Mm-hmm.
come up to the conversation, help them to see the biases they may come up with, and for us to have a healthy dialogue to
Indeed.
just start to recognize each other's humanity
Mm.
and learn from each other.
Well, I'll tell you what, bro. You know how they have interfaith and interreligious dinners, right? We get together, we have some rice and some goat and some chicken and some beef, and we shake hands and we're all polite to each other and we leave. That's never
Yeah,
going to be it, right? The
yeah,
first thing you have to do is establish authentic relationships, right? And that means that you got to go beyond those one-off dinners. Those one-off dinners is just superficialities that people do at universities and organizations and nonprofits just to say
mm,
we did it. You got to pick one person there, one rabbi, right? Here's what I did. There's one older rabbi. He's a legend in the Jewish community for his basically his alternative look at mysticism and spirituality. He's one of the co-founders of Hebrew College. I'm one of the educators at Hebrew College. But when I first met him and I knew who he was, I made sure I got his email and I began to email him. And I said, listen, I want to learn from you, right? I need you to make some time for me. And at first he's like, oh, that's nice, this, that, and the other. But I said, no, no, you don't understand. I need you to make some time for me. Let me come pick your brain, right? Because for me, it's not about me being afraid that I'm going to change religions or that my religion is superior to him. This is a man that been on earth like 60 years longer than me. And he's been successful at what he does. So let me sit with you and take those things from you that I can apply to my own context, right? And I think that's just the first thing is somebody in the relationship got to be humble. If I go into it and I'm like, yeah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, my religion is
Mm.
superior,
Yeah.
then I'm never going to taste the sweetness of that relationship. So somebody got to be humble. And oftentimes I'm fine with that, right? Because I know myself, I know what I stand for, I know what I represent, and I make sure they know what I represent. But that doesn't mean I can't learn from them. So that's the first thing is you got to find authentic relationships. Then number two is you got to have what's called like Ibu Patel, who's an interreligious, great interreligious leader. He calls it imaginative empathy, which means like you,
Imaginative empathy. Okay.
yes, to imagine what it's like to be in another person's shoes, right? To say,
Mm.
okay, I'm not, I'm not a white woman who's a Quaker, but let me see what that's like in her shoes, based on what she's telling me, based on her narrative, based on her story, her hopes, her dreams. So really listening and then finding that empathy in the story, it does wonders because oftentimes when we listen to people from other religion, we got our shield up, right? We ready to, because they're not always going to say stuff that's pleasing to our ears and our hearts because the theology it might be a little different, but we have to
Mm.
realize that listening is not diminishing. And so there's
Yeah.
oftentimes that, I've been on panels with my rabbi friends, my pastor friends, and they say things that make me, frankly, my intellectual positions are completely different. I may cringe inside. But what I've
Mm.
learned to do is find the truth in those things because it's their lived experience, bro. I can't negate their lived
Mm.
experience, right? This is something that they believe based on their life experience. And this is, I think, the beauty in having that capital T truth that every individual thinks that they have. I'm on the real truth. But then there's a whole bunch of tiny T truths based on
Mm.
people's lived experiences. So we got to respect those tiny T's, those small T's. Everyone comes to the table with a different experience that God gave them, right?
Mm.
And if you never had to borrow no sugar from your gay neighbor because you poor and your gay neighbor's the only one who got some sugar, then don't tell me that I need to hate all gay people, right? Because you got to
Mm.
be in real experiences to say, nah, this dude's gay, but he gave me some sugar last week. He gave me some cheese. He helped my mother carry the bags up, the grocery bags up. Real experiences with real people. And I think that's what humanizes us.
Yeah. And I think that's all about recognizing our shared humanity too.
Mm,
Like when if you can do that imaginative empathy, you'll be able to recognize that humanity in somebody and not dehumanize them like we so often do in different cultures, religion
indeed.
aspects in America. And so now we're reduced to less than human because now I don't see you as a human being anymore. You're not my equal anymore. So now I have the right, the authority, the power, whatever you want to call it, to
Yes, yes,
place you in this place in this situation and separate you from
that's right.
what what
Because
what I am.
because once you're not, as you said, once you're not human to me, once you're an object, once I objectify you, then I have license to treat you however I want because you're not real. I can dehumanize you, and that's the steps to fascism. Basically, is amongst the first steps is to dehumanize people in groups and individually, because then you can harm them without a conscience because they
Mhm.
don't matter.
The other thing I'm thinking about is because people's truth shapes them and their
Hmm.
religious beliefs and sometimes that truth is their reality. When I'm speaking, when you're speaking your truth and you're trying to connect and even if it's from a level of humanity, how do you do that, so that dance so delicately that like my mom, she's real religious, right? And so there's certain things that she believes that I don't believe, but I have that set belief, and I have my truths. I'll share my truths, but like she might question my belief in my truth.
Yes.
But I have a hard time with like, okay, I can't dismantle her truth and her belief based on my belief because I haven't given her something foundationally to
Mm,
get curious about that's going
mm,
to allow her to explore. Because if I just do it, she's going to shut it down, and then I don't want to hear nothing else because I
right.
done blew up her whole thing. Right?
Yeah.
How do you do that delicate dance in a way that allows to not call people out, but call people in to get
Mm,
curious?
that's beautiful, brother. Well put. Great question. Here's what I would say. I don't know, but I can give it a shot. I think that what we have to first understand is that people draw on their beliefs based on a lot of it is drawn off of their trauma. So your
Mm,
mama, God bless her, Mama Love probably got some trauma that those beliefs supplemented that trauma in some way, right? And so she's holding on to those beliefs just like you're holding on to your beliefs based on your experiences. So I think the first thing we have to do is understand something called public love. I mean, for mama, it's not public love, it's more intimate love. But I'm saying for people who have these opposite beliefs or people who you want to try to, give them something that they can believe in more than what they have at the time, you got to express public love. What does that mean? So in theology, there's something called this is the three B's. They say believe, behave, belong. So
mm-hmm,
this is the standard theological framing. So that means that once Taryell believes what I believe and he behaves like I behave, man, now he belongs with my group. But
mm-hmm,
that's flawed. Why? Because people need to be warmly owned and loved on and nurtured before they can believe anything. So our problem is that we approach it intellectually, right? Look at this truth
mm-hmm,
right here. Read this Bible verse. Read this Quran verse. That's an intellectual argument. I say the three B's are number one, belong. I got to make you
mm-hmm,
feel like I love you first. And then behave. And then once I make you feel like I love you, then we're gonna start to hang out and have the same commonalities and habits. Then once we behave, the belief is gonna come. So what I really think it all boils down to is the same principles that Jesus had. Look, if religion was just for me, then I don't never have to come outside. If religion was for Jesus, he didn't never have to leave his cave. Muhammad didn't
mm-hmm,
have to leave the cave. Moses could have stayed with God on the mountaintop in the bush. But religion is for people. So that means
mm-hmm,
that you don't bring them to religion and just knock them over the head with it. That means that you got to bring it to them and then accommodate them where they're at. You got
mm-hmm,
to accommodate people. It's about accommodation, and that comes with loving on them and nurturing them. Because once you have their heart, everything else is easy. But our problem is that our religious supremacy makes us go for the mind and the intellect. I'm going to prove to you that your belief is false and mine is correct. When really, for
mm-hmm,
mama love, just keep loving on her, and then you got to also demonstrate that what you have is sufficient or even superior by your own behavior. So you got to beautify your actions, right? If you come
mm-hmm,
through smelling like weed, and I'm not saying this is you, I'm just saying if a person comes through smelling like weed some days, eyes
mm-hmm,
bloodshot red, wifey's calling because you're beating her, and then when you argue about religion, you got all these great points about religion. How has that religion affected your heart, brother? Because you out here
mm-hmm,
beating your woman, you smoking, you drinking, you leaning, you leaking. So
mm-hmm,
first thing we got to do is beautify ourselves with our belief system, if it's true. Because if it's true, it should edify us. And then
mm-hmm.
secondly, accommodation, loving on people, making them feel that they belong.
I love that, brother. Meeting people where they at.
I
Man,
apologize for being long-winded. That was kind of long.
no, I love all of that. I was in tune to it. I was I don't even know where to go from there. um, let's close off with this. So two things. We'll close with two things because I was looking at your website or one of the websites that was on the link, and along with what you doing with the, it seems like there's a drink on there, there's some clothing, there's a podcast. Like y'all got a
Yeah,
little bit of everything going on.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
tell
yeah.
me a little bit about that. I guess that's the entrepreneurial side of you.
Yeah, and here's the thing is that it's funny you mentioned that, Taryll, because what I found is that religion doesn't pay, and it shouldn't
Okay.
pay, rightfully so. I think that people who it's a slippery slope when you start to get paid off religion. And I talk about that in the book American Imam, about how when I was working at Harvard and working at Facing History and Ourselves, I began to make more money in my life than I ever made. And then it became about making profit and not about God's word. So for me, I had to create something, an independent stream of income, right? And that's, we have a beverage. It's a sparkling honey water in several flavors. We sell it, and we also teach the kids to sell it, and they make money. That's for two reasons. We have that product and those merchandise because we feel like if you're preaching the truth, there should be nobody that should be able to check you with a check, right? You shouldn't be able to write me a check to check my mind and my tongue. So I got to make an independent source of income. That's number one. And number two is, it's only so long that you can take a wayward youth and put him through sports and music before he pick up that bag or that gun and go get something. So for me, it's about teaching them self-determination through entrepreneurship.
I love that. I love that. So let's close us out with this. The
Yeah,
book. Where can people go get the book? You go on
yeah,
a book tour soon, and
yeah,
how can people connect with you if they want to get connected with you?
yeah. I appreciate you, man. The book is called American Imam: From Pop Stardom to Prison Abolition. It is available for pre-order now on Amazon.com. You just type in American Imam, it'll come up. It's also that's good enough. It's on Broadleaf Books. You can go to broadleafbooks.com. It's there as well. It'll be out February 27th of 2024. I'll be doing some talks along college campuses. I'll be at Politics and Prose, which is in DC. I'll be there sometime in January, February, I believe.
Oh, that's my hometown. You gonna be in my hometown,
Yes,
but
sir. Then we got to
I'm
connect. You
not
got to
there
make
now.
something
But
happen for me there.
I might have to go back to DC just to connect with you. I'm out in San Diego now, but that's my hometown still. I got love for
Yeah, we,
DC.
we got to talk. We got to talk because those are two places that I'm interested in. We got to talk, man.
Okay, all
Um,
right.
and you can reach me. You can connect with me on Spentum.com, SPENTEM, two E's. Or you can go to, please follow me on Instagram at Imam Taymullah. That's all my social media, Imam Taymullah. And that's it, man. I hope I hear from some people.
Like, I appreciate you, brother. And don't worry if y'all driving or you didn't get it. I'm gonna put all the links. I'm gonna get it from him, put it in the show notes. Tell you, my brother,
So,
this has been straight fire. I
likewise.
appreciate you. I salute you, brother. You doing your thing out here, and keep creating spaces, meet people where they're at. I hope I can meet you wherever you at, and we in the same hood, and we can make some things happen.
I love it, man. And thank you for everything you've done and for creating this platform for people like me to come and speak our truth. So I appreciate you, man. And much love to you and respect as well. God bless you, bro.
Thank you, brother. That's it for our episode today. Y'all stay tuned, support my brother, and we'll catch you on the next time.